Hey, I'm Andrew with JVR Industries, and today I want to show you our rebuilt Rollstock ink packaging machine and kind of go through the process of what we do and show you from start to finish how extensive our rebuild process is. This is a Rollstock RI200. These are originally manufactured in Kansas City. They are 100% US made, which is great. All the parts are off the shelf for the most part. We stock them here. We can do custom tooling, and we can kind of customize this machine however you need for your application. So this is not a simple reconditioning process that we go through. This is a full-on rebuild. We strip these down all the same way and build them from the ground up to get it to a point where they look as close to new as you're possibly going to get out of a used machine. So as you can see from this unit, I'm just going to go through just some of it. I'm not going to touch on everything, some of the things that we end up doing. For starters, we strip the machine down, we take the chains off, we'll rebuild. If we have to replace any springs or bushings, those get replaced. If they're stretched past their usable life, we will replace the chains entirely. So we do take a look at that. All of the buckets and dies come out. The heads get sent out for Tefloning. All new heaters, new thermocouples, all new internals in the forming and the sealing heads. The buckets come out. We do a lot of sandblasting to a variety of different components. There's a lot of aluminum components on this machine, so all those items will get sandblasted. So we'll take the heads off and we'll port them, because oftentimes what we'll see is some corrosion in the system because it is aluminum. Water's running through this. A lot of customers will run city water through these, and there's calcium and hard water deposits that will build up. So we'll drill out the factory slugs and then we'll port them. And then we'll put serviceable plugs in their place, which is great because down the road, if you ever get a plug in there, you can just remove these plugs and quickly and easily unclog the heads. Also, we'll take all of the vacuum and pneumatic lines out of the machine, which you'll be able to see a little bit later. We'll show you underneath it, but we take all those out and we replace them. We will redo all the guards, as you can kind of see here. New polycarbonate guards with a fully boxed frame. This is an upgrade over the OEM. We do a four-sided fully boxed frame. These things can be dropped over and over again and not break, which is awesome. We replace all of the cords and the die plugs. So as you can see, they get new male and female plugs. We will, if necessary, upgrade. If the machine already has the newer touchscreen conversions, we will not replace it if not needed. But if it has an older generation of the Mitsubishi controls, which these machines previous to, I think, like, I don't know, 2010 roughly, had the older style, we will remove those and put in a brand new Mitsubishi GOT control and PLC in the back. We will go through the seal head, similar to the forming head. We'll replace the bladders in the head. We'll replace the springs and the seals and all the gaskets. Anything that's wearable will get replaced. The same thing with the die box. We'll take that apart and we will go through it, sandblast it, and polish that up and make it look real nice. Stainless steel guards just get cleaned up. Unless they're obviously damaged, then we'll have to replace them. So let's just show you under the hood here. So this machine is set up with a guillotine, which again will get rebuilt. We'll take it apart. It at a minimum gets a new knife, usually new cylinders up top, new hoses, new bushings down below for the piston guide. The crosscut knives, a lot of times they'll get a new cylinder assembly, and then we'll take everything apart and sandblast and clean it up. We will replace, as far as film transports, we'll go through and replace bushings up top. Any of the bushings that are worn, we have a tolerance that we check and make sure that those are within spec. We will replace main bearings in here so that this dancing arm moves nice and freely, and the same thing with the springs. Those always get replaced, even if they look brand new, because we just don't know how much life is left on them, so those springs will end up getting replaced. All of the aluminum and stainless components get cleaned up. This machine actually, this was a full rebuild. This one we did about an 80% rebuild. The customer's more aware, he's aware of exactly what we skimped on, and that's because from the point that we got the order to when he wants it delivered was 6 weeks, which is way faster. Normally this process takes about 8 to 10 at a minimum. So I told him certain cosmetic things we were going to have to skip over in order to get this done in the amount of time. So one of the things, again, it's almost 100% cosmetic, but we would take this motor off, clean it up thoroughly, and repaint it. We did redo the knife assemblies for them. They'll get brand new knives, new holders, new collars because these wear out, and then this one did not receive it, but on a full rebuild we would end up replacing the holders on this end, the steel holders themselves, because the steel ones will start to wallow out a little bit and you'll get a little bit of play. This one feels really good, so I wasn't concerned with it. That's about it from the top. I'd like to show you the electrical cabinet. Actually, before we do that, let's take a peek at the pump. So you might get a Bush or a Leibold pump. 90% of them are going to be going out with Bush pumps. If it's a Leibold, you'll know. Both of them are great pumps, but we will tear them down, we'll rebuild them, paint them. At a minimum, obviously testing. This one got a full test. We bench tested it for 6 hours to make sure that it was performing to the standards that any of these machines would when they're new. Replacing hoses, couplings, changing the oil, doing exhaust filters, the whole 9 yards there. We'll go through and replace the trim canister hoses. Most of these fittings end up getting replaced, at least the male ends will. Female ends, we test them and make sure that they're working properly, and if they're not, then those will get replaced. Electrical, let's take a peek in here. And this is one of the newer Rollstocks. This one's not terribly old. We'll rebuild them anywhere from a 96, I think that's like the oldest, up to, you know, a few years old. So this is I think a 2015, so it actually came to us pretty corroded. There was a lot of corrosion just because the previous customer was really beating on it, and I think they hosed it down every single day. But we didn't have to do the SMC conversion, although we do still take all the SMC valves out and do a cleaning and make sure there's nothing that's loose or any leaks there. But typically we would convert this, if this is the old Rexroth valves, we would convert it over to SMC, brand new valve rack assembly. We would do a brand new air prep assembly most of the time with these. Often we'll end up replacing the VFD and put a newer, more compact VFD on there. That's the drive for the chains. PLCs are always replaced if we are doing a touchscreen conversion, which is more often than not. And as you can see, every machine's going to go out looking this good or better. And like I said, this one we were rushing a little bit, but I'd say this one turned out looking pretty darn good for the time that we had. You know, little things like that cover missing is bothering me right now, so we'll definitely get that cover put on there. But you can see how clean everything is. It's going to look like it does when it comes new from the factory. So. Just see how clean everything is when it's all done. This is our forming die box. All the lines end up getting replaced. Any of the hoses will get replaced. The exhaust valve for the forming bucket gets replaced, and then there's also one hidden for the head. That one also gets replaced. Most, if not all, of the fittings will end up getting replaced because over time they don't release these quick disconnect fittings. So those will get swapped out. And the cylinder, the main die lift cylinder that lifts everything up, that will get pulled out and rebuilt. So there's seals inside, and we'll take that apart and make sure there's zero leaks, and the inner seals and rings get replaced on that. Everything obviously gets greased. We do also replace these main bearings here for the die lift bearings. There's 6 in total, and all of those will always get replaced. There's never one that will not get those. And obviously everything gets cleaned and greased up before it ships out. Good. Now on this end, this is our sealing die box. So again, these components all get pulled out, the rails get pulled out and get cleaned up. Normally we would actually take a special grinder that we have here to give these a nice clean new finish. Again, that was one of the things we skipped on. We did clean them up, but we didn't take it to the same level. And then we'd get these shining and looking really nice. But again, these bearings get replaced, hoses all get replaced. This is kind of the heart of the machine. Other than the vacuum pump, this is the second heart of the machine. This is our vacuum valve assembly. So 9 times out of 10, if anything's acting up on the machine, it's going to be because of the vacuum valve assembly. So we always pull these out and do a full rebuild on these. If there is any mark or scoring or any imperfection in the cylinder walls of the aluminum assemblies, those get replaced. So we don't mess around with those. And then at a minimum, they get all new pistons and springs and seals. So any of the moving parts inside these assemblies get replaced. You can see new hoses. We like black for all the pneumatics, so all the pneumatic hoses will be black. All of the water lines will be either a clear or be like a clear blue. And then these smaller clear hoses, these are for our vacuum lines. These will either be clear blue or clear themselves. This is our drive motor for the chains. This would get normally on a full rebuild removed. We would clean it up, we would paint it, we would bench test it. We did change out the gear oil on here, but that obviously would take place. And we would get this thing looking like brand new before we put it back in. A lot of times these get rusted out because we get some older machines where these are in a rough shape. So a lot of those, the motor itself ends up getting replaced. And we have even torn down the gearboxes and replaced the seals in there. If the seals are leaking even the slightest bit, we'll end up rebuilding those to at least replace the seals. This is our vacuum for the trim scrap. This will get pulled out and also painted. This one did not, but it was in pretty clean shape already, and it was in looked really good, so we didn't have to do anything with it. Again, vacuum hose, all the other lines get replaced. This is our Guillotine knife assembly. This piston will get bench tested. The bushings for the lift mechanism will get replaced, and we pull all of these components out and clean them up and free everything up. If anything is stuck or seized, or if there's any corrosion, that all gets cleaned up. So finally, after we are finished with the rebuilding process, we test it. These machines will get tested a minimum of 2 days. We usually run through about 1,000 feet worth of film, and we'll run it until we know for sure and we're 100% confident. We'll do all the adjustments, our die gap adjustments. We'll make sure that all of the components are within spec and that this machine is working like it would if it came out of the factory. So just want to kind of run through. We'll run a few cycles and kind of show you how this one performs. Again, we can do custom tooling and we can do different configurations. Right now we're warmed up. I'm just going to turn on our vacuum pump and our trim canister. So this is running at about 7.5 cycles a minute. We can usually get these running at about 8.5. And then with additional upgrades, we can get them running around 8.5 to 9.5, especially if we go larger with the pump and do some customizations to the machine. We test every single one with a torque gauge. We make sure there's no leaks. We do vacuum tests on the seal die to make sure that we don't have any vacuum leaks in the system. We use calibrated torque gauges to make sure that those numbers are accurate. All the knives get adjusted so everything's cutting right in the middle. And like I said, this one doesn't have our center cut, but you can see how nice of a package that's creating. Lastly, thanks for checking out this video. If you have any questions in regards to rebuilt Rollstock equipment or just Rollstock packaging equipment in general, then definitely give me a call, give our office a call, 716-206-2500, and thanks for checking this out.